Oh no. I think I just stripped this stud out. I smell fuel. All right, let's continue our journey. Does your classic car have issues starting, especially after you've driven it for a while? Should not have turned the car off. Has it ever just stalled on you when you come to a stop? We made it, but it stalled on the turn into the parking lot, so. Do you see fuel boiling in your filter? Yeah. Well, no more. Well, say it with me. Not today, Vapor Lock. Sometimes for as little as 10 American dollars. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Between the Sharks. Our daily driver C10 project still has some Vapor Lock issues, mostly because I didn't solve them. I just acknowledged them in the last video. So today I'm going to take you through the symptoms, what we're seeing, and how to solve all of them so you don't have any issues moving forward in your carbureted classic car. This is totally solvable, team. Let's have a look. Ah, there she is, right where I left her. So team, your carbureting machine, no matter what kind you have, wants liquid fuel. It wants to choose to atomize it at its own leisure. Liquid fuel carburetor. However, when gasoline turns to vapor in the line before the carburetor, Vapor Lock is much like it sounds. Get your nerd glasses on. What that means is essentially when the fuel turns to a vapor in the line, it expands and creates basically a vapor bubble that the liquid fuel can't really get past, thus stopping the fuel flow to your carburetor. So this truck has Vapor Lock in its truest form. It's creating vapor in the line before the carburetor. That's not necessarily the only form of Vapor Lock, and usually the one that's not discussed most in the forums. Well, you see, that version involves your carburetor directly. The idea being is you drive your car, you get it real hot, nice and toasty, having a good old time, you park at the ice cream stand, and when you come out to start it up, take everybody home, well, she ain't starting. One of the things you may notice when she finally starts is a big cloud of black smoke. And that is essentially because all of the fuel in the carburetor has boiled and gone down into your intake. It's basically boiled past all the places it wanted to be, and some of it has evaporated and the other parts have created a very rich condition. When you try to start the car, it won't start. Got a trick for starting it like that. Now, if you find yourself in that position where the fuel is boiled over out of the carburetor, the best way to start your vehicle is to hold the pedal all the way to the floor and then turn the key. Yeah, she's vapor locking bad, man. So rich coming out of there. That means that fuel is just boiling over. That will clear out all the fuel that's in there and basically eliminate your rich condition. That's how you get rid of flooding as well, because, well, that's the same thing with potentially a different cause. Lucky for us, this truck has both of those conditions. I don't know if that's lucky, but anyway, I'm going to show you how to solve them both because this truck has them both. Gang, a lot of people like to blame ethanol for everything. Why they didn't get a promotion, why they're not more handsome, and for Vapor Lock and all other fuel-related issues on a classic car. I'll tell you what, I drive exclusively classic cars, and I run them on the cheapest gas I can possibly get my hands on, and they work every day, and I'm going to show you how to do just that. Ethanol, 100% gas, winter blend, summer blend, doesn't really matter. They all have different boiling points and different vaporizing points, but what they do have in common, the temperature of everything else in here is higher than that vaporization point. Now, obviously this is a small block Chevy, but this may apply to nearly any engine. So take a look at your fuel line routing first. Coming off the fuel pump, well, this rubber line is just sitting right on the header. That's a sure way to get everything in here hot as hell, which is not what we want. We've got the fuel coming out of the fuel pump to the fuel line, in this case through a filter to the carburetor. The carburetor has a needle end seat, so it only lets fuel into a certain level, at which point a float comes up, stops the flow of fuel into the carburetor. Well, the fuel just sits here, waiting to be let in the door. Just, you know, anytime you're ready, knock, 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 knock. Now, if you're idling and in traffic, or if you're cruising at a steady speed, these things actually just sip fuel. So as the fuel's not moving through here, it is just cooking away. The fuel gets hot and the liquid turns to gas. Like not gasoline, but like vapor lock. Phase one, let's run our fuel line in a way that it's not touching the hottest part of the engine. And then we need to give the fuel somewhere to go, and that's what's in this little box. Phase one for us is going to be installing some hard fuel line. I found this in the shop. I don't know what it was originally for, but it's going to be great for this. This is going to make a mess, that's fine. All right, bang yourself a hose clamp on there. Guys, if things get too easy, I get nervous. Come on. Come on, buddy. It's thinking about it. It's a little apprehensive. It's like, man, I probably wasn't even a fuel line. What are you doing? I'm like, you're gonna be though, bud. There's room to grow. You're a tube, you can do it. So now that we've got phase one in progress, before we complete phase one, let's look at phase two, because it fits in line with phase one. Vapor lock happens in conditions when you're not using a lot of fuel, and there's a lot of fuel stuck between the needle and the fuel pump just waiting to get into the carburetor to go have a good time. So we got to keep that fuel flowing, and this is how we're going to do it. So this is a Wix 33040. It's about 10 American dollars. Now you can get a microcard for like 6 if you want. Thing about it is a fuel filter with a little bypass. That little bypass is a return to the tank. You may be thinking to yourself, man, I don't have a return line to the tank. Well, if you're working on a square body, you sure do, and I'll show you where it is. If you're working on anything past probably 1969, there probably is one lurking around under the hood that you may not know about, part of an emissions collection system. If you had a charcoal canister, it used to sit right here. If we put our eyeballs down here, right there, we have a return fuel line that goes all the way back to the tank. Then had a very similar situation. Now, if you don't have one, if you've got an older truck like that, you got to weigh your options here, because 99% of the time, if you're actually having vapor lock in the fuel line, this will solve your problem. If you don't have a return line, I recommend you move the fuel line out from away from the headers or all the heat that you possibly can. And if that's not good enough and you have to make a return line, here's my recommendation. Grab yourself a new sending unit and pick up some hardware store fittings. Make yourself a return port into your gas tank on the new unit. I say that because I stumbled on a poor guy on YouTube who drilled a hole in a gas tank with an electric drill, which turned into a severe burn for him because the drill sparked. This is not something I ever would have considered a danger until I saw that video. I've seen drills spark. I know what fuel vapor can do. Never would have thought of it. So poor dude, I will never drill into a fuel tank with an electric drill if it's had fuel in it. It's just, that's scary business. So, but a new sending unit can solve that problem for you. So unfortunately, sometimes the fuel line is on the wrong side. I'm not really sure how the contraptionry used to work with the original canister, but we're gonna go ahead and undo that center bracket on the cross member and then sneak that fuel line best we can over to the other side so that we're running the least amount of additional fuel line. All right, we got our lids. Come on, buddy. Come on. Come on. Question is, can I just bend this thing without completely kinking it? Where does it go? Okay, it's a hard line all the way back. Oh, am I changing course already? Dang it, I probably am. Never gonna get this out of the way of the fan. I guess we're running fuel line the long way. Fine, you win again, Chevrolet. All right, it helps if you get the right socket. I might have been turning it for a while with a 9/16 and didn't go anywhere. Half inch is working significantly better. We might be ordering a fuel tank for this vehicle sooner than later, unfortunately for my wallet. It's so bad. Look how gross that is. We are leaving a decent amount of rubber line here, but it's always good to have a service loop, as it were. You know, just a little bit you can trim off when you break something to repurpose for something else to potentially MacGyver your way home. Just gotta figure out the happy place for this to be. Just do a little trimmeroo. I've probably owned 20 different tubing cutters. Of course, can't find a single one, so we're gonna try this. This is probably not the preferred method, but you know, we're gonna do it anyway, because I'm impatient right now. Well, that kind of worked. Not bad. And that's its natural jiggly position. So we can fasten it, but it'll probably do the trick. It's much better than a rubber fuel line laying on the header. But now, we gotta get from this port over down to this feller down here. Don't have a great way to do that yet, so we're gonna go rooting around and See what we can find. There's got to be something in there. Well, I don't have the right stuff, but I probably have stuff that'll work. So that's what we're gonna go with. Bang a little fuel line on there. Hose clamps. A little bit of hard line. Would you believe it? I knew where the screwdriver was. We now have created a bypass loop. Our fuel comes out of our fuel pump, heads out towards our carburetor. The 3/8 line goes to the carburetor, giving it constant pressure. When the float sinks and the needle opens, all the fuel that the carburetor would like can go into the carburetor. But in those conditions where we're barely sipping fuel, idle, steady cruise, like highway cruising or whatever, well, now instead of the fuel sitting in the fuel line and just boiling, we now have a bypass. So the fuel will flow through the filter, back down here, back to the tank, back to the cool fuel in the tank, and then run back out. So it never stays still anymore, reducing the opportunity for it to vaporize itself. Now, obviously, you can make this as elegant as you would like. This should put a huge dent in the problem we were having after we were idling in traffic, where we ended up actually stalling. But we're not done yet, team. This thing still has the other, also very common vapor lock issue, which is you run it, you get it hot, you park it at the ice cream stand, you get your ice cream, you come back out, and then she won't start. And that's because all the fuel's boiled out of the carburetor and gone down into the intake. Let's go figure out why and how to solve it. Apparently this thing is in a mudslide. What? What? Please, I don't understand. Come on. Good Lord. Great googly moogly. I don't know if this is like a team of ants that built their house in here or what on earth is going on. But there's a whole lot of it. How am I supposed to... Good gracious. How's a guy supposed to remove a carburetor under these conditions? It's like moon rocks, gang. Good Lord. Watch this. All dusty over there. Gee whiz. Where were we? Anybody remember? So the situation we've got here, and you may have at home, is we have an intake sitting on top of a hot engine. Our intake happens to be aluminum, and aluminum is real good at heat transfer. But if you're driving for a while, your cast iron intake is going to do exactly the same thing. On top of that, we have an aluminum carburetor, which is also really good at heat transfer. So as the engine gets super hot, we're cooling it with liquid coolant and the fan and everything else. And then when we shut it off, all that heat has nothing to do but rise. What you end up with is a hot engine heating up an intake manifold, heating up a carburetor, which is essentially going to boil your fuel because everything you got going on under here is above 200 degrees, and every fuel made to run through one of these things boils at a temperature below that and vaporizes at a temperature below that. We need to isolate the heat transfer as much as we can between the intake and the carburetor. Here's what we've got to solve that. This is an Edelbrock heat insulator gasket thing. So basically you put this between the intake and the carburetor and it stops the heat transfer direct. Yes, you have a paper gasket in there right now, but that's not really gonna do much to stop the heat transfer. That's what these are designed for. I don't know why it's not right there on the package. This thing was on the shelf at the O'Reilly's. I'll shake it up here. Come on, show me, come on. Even comes with the extra long studs you need. This one has even extra longer studs because of our weird Mr. Gasket spacer. So believe you me, I'm gonna do as little as possible to pull this carburetor off. We're gonna disconnect basically nothing. So if you guys gotta do this kind of monkey business, make sure you pull off all the washers that may be on these studs before you try to lift the carburetor, because one of these going down the intake will ruin your day. Here we go. So as far as I understand, this thing is the gasket. That's how I always install them. And it's been a-okay, and I've actually seen a legit improvement. Oh no. I think I just stripped this stud out. I can't pull it out. Guess I'm gonna let it ride. Crap. All right, we'll just pretend everything's great. I see a helicoil in my future. Son of a... It's fine. Put your little party hat back on. Maybe it'll survive for a little bit, and then we'll pull this all back apart and do some helicoils on another day. But we got plans today. We gotta go scrapping, and I need this thing to do it. Speaking of party hats, check out this thing. Sister made it. Put a link in the thing. She's got a store. It's kind of fun. For the most part, this should solve most of the vapor locking issues or make them manageable. I live in the Southeast. It gets insanely hot, which means the pavement's hot. Traffic is terrible around Atlanta where I am. So we have all the conditions to make bad vapor lock. This bypass is the biggest fix that will help a lot. But even with the bypass, once the fuel stops flowing and sits in the carburetor, these little isolator things that Edelbrock makes are extremely helpful. I've got them on, I think, the Blazer and the van, and they seem to actually help out. In addition, just remember that little trick from before about how to start your car if it's vapor locking, because that's another thing. If you're new, you might drain your battery before you realize what you're doing. And pumping the gas is not gonna help you. Considering I've only stripped one stud today, I'm gonna continue on and press my luck. This valve cover is leaking, so while we're at it, I'm gonna dive in there, which is gonna give us a clue of how cared for or not cared for this motor was. Place your bets in the comments. Clean or full of sludge? We're gonna find out. Ignorance is bliss. But this thing smokes like the dickens after I park it. All off that exhaust manifold, all oil pouring out of that thing. All right, none of them are tight. That just not tight at all. Okay, I mean, maybe that's why it's leaking. One of the many reasons. There'll be plenty of reasons that things aren't right on a Bubba Up truck like this one. Bubba's cousin, Bubba's friend, the guy that taught Bubba everything he knows. Not tight at all. Moment of truth. I don't know if I want the truth. Do you want the truth?
You can't handle the truth.
What do you guys think? It's gonna be good or bad? Good or bad? Good or bad? Dang. Remarkably clean under there. Not mad at that at all. Pretty thrilled, actually. I mean, this could have been completely full of sludge. Of all the motors that aren't cared for, I know that the early 80s 305s are pretty much like, you know, nobody likes them. So they don't give them the oil changes that they require. And I'm really bad about changing oil, but this is maybe encouraging enough for me to do that once every 30,000 miles. Man, I was gonna give it these badass speed parts as if it says Chevrolet here in case y'all didn't know. But I need an oil filler, and this set doesn't have it. Somebody RTV'd the snot out of these, which that's not unusual, but the fact that it held is, which means these valve covers were clean when they did it. This is making me wonder. It looks like it's been trimmed up on this top side, which is interesting and a surefire way to make sure it doesn't ever seat. I guess we'll pretend we didn't see that for now. I'm hyper focused on not driving this razor into my hand, which is usually the time when I drive the razor right into my hand. I mean, that's stuck. That never happens when I do it. I'll be here all day cleaning off somebody's good work. This also doesn't feel right, the way these are pooched out like that. So what I'm looking at on these is there's a lump where this gets bolted down, which I don't know how they even did it. Found a more better one in the stash. I think it's also off a late 70s 305 out of the van. Hell yeah, orange. It's not all bubbled up. It has the lip on both sides where this one has been trimmed off, but I suppose they did that after they tightened it down when it wasn't seated correctly, thus pooching everything out and making sure it did not seal anywhere but where the bolts were. Nailed it. All right, that should hopefully leak 6 or 7% less. If you like that speckled paint job look, make sure you got plenty of motor oil and a bit of undried brake clean. When you spray paint, you'll get that nice Beetlejuice texture. Then we're gonna go do the right thing. Load this up with 1,000 pounds of scrap metal and see if it'll make it. See if it overheats, see if it vapor locks. We haven't even tried to turn it on. How is that for ambitious? Let's turn it on and see how much fuel sprays everywhere. All right, I guess we got to test the work we just did with some practical application. We didn't have fuel spraying all over, so that's step one. We have got to get rid of some scrap metal, starting with that washer dryer unit. Thing was awesome. Worked for over 20 years. Then the transmission seized up on it. The parts cost more than replacing it with another used one. Well, it's completely unlike me. I think I'm gonna go ahead and scrap this door too. She's super hammered over here. I don't think there's any fixing that. Just triple checking everything. No fuel leak in there. No fuel leaking anywhere. Oh, I knew that was coming and it still got me. So back at the ranch, we've got furnace parts that came out of the house, the dryer that got left behind, water heater that came out of the house. All seen the camper. That's got to get demolished at some point. So we got a lack of C10 parts back here. The bed and the front clip sold. One door went onto the truck, the other door is sitting over there. $800 for the front clip and the bed. I don't feel bad about that. There's a little room for the other guy if he needed to sell it, and it's out of my way. And that brings the purchase price of the truck down to 700 American dollars. Not bad. I also have all of this furnace. It's heavy, I know, because I lifted it out of the crawl space through a great big hole in the floor. All that coming soon. One project at a time, but we're gonna have to get out here sooner than later. We had a bunch of tree work done, and at this point the grade is pretty easy to see. We have sort of a berm right over here, and then like a little bit of a dip, and then back toward the fence it goes higher again, and you can just see the vortex from the torrential downpour. It just runs, you know, right against the house where all this mud is that didn't used to be here. We're gonna see if we can invert that at some point and move the little berm here so that the water runs, you know, away from the house. I don't know if the little gas-powered skid steer can do it, but we're gonna find out. It's one of the things I hoped it would be able to do. One project at a time. Well, it's starting pretty easily, so I keep forgetting to show you guys because I don't think it's, I don't think the carburetor's boiling over like it was. I'm a little nervous, I'm not gonna lie to you. I do hate going scrapping, which is weird because it allows me to get rid of junk and make some taco money or some hot dog money depending on how I'm feeling that day, or hamburger money because I do see the Hamburger Man pretty regularly. But I did watch The Brave Little Toaster a lot as a kid, but I definitely think the junkyard scrapyard scene is the most traumatic. Cars not wanting to get smushed, getting smushed, can't handle it. That's why I gotta save as many as I can, gang. For unexpected adventure is extremely high right now. I think I have all of 50 or 60 miles on this thing, and we've got it pretty fully loaded at this point. So, you know, we're still doing our test runs. In addition, we got all into the fuel system earlier. Like Captain Ron says,
Anything's gonna happen. It's gonna happen out there.
Glad I put these vent windows back together though, because they are lovely on a toasty day like this. I smell fuel. This is definitely not good. So, good news is it's not under the hood. Bad news is, do we have a leak in the return line somewhere between the front and the tank? And I don't know. So we're gonna pull in over to the side and check. I see a huge puddle behind us, so we may be in serious trouble. Not good. are pouring fuel out. I don't know where from. It's our main fuel line. Oh boy. That's crazy. That's like the one thing that we didn't touch. Wow. So we're pouring fuel for sure from the front right here, which is our main fuel line, which we didn't undo. It's I guess us just moving it around cracked it. So that was waiting to happen anyway. But what do we got going on here? Is this me just being confused? Is this just water coming out of our scrap? Yeah, I think that's just water. Oh boy, that's a lot of gasoline. And part of my panic attack is suddenly realizing I don't have a fire extinguisher in this vehicle yet. So we're gonna clean this up. We're gonna make our way to the next place to get a fire extinguisher, and then we're gonna figure out where to go from there. Whew. Don't think I have the fuel line with me, so let's see how to fix this. And in the bag of tricks, probably not much, but we got a screwdriver and I got a pocket knife, so let's make this happen. Man, that was scary. Very scary. Of all the places to get a fuel leak, I did not expect it to be from the one that we didn't touch. Got my brake dents and cardboard floor mat. It's just pouring out of there. Take a look. Gang. Whew. That could have been catastrophic. I mean, that is a catastrophic fuel line failure. But the fact that I don't have a fire extinguisher on me is 100% against my normal practice and my fault. Whew. Good gravy. Trying to see if I have any scissors or whatever. Wow. I mean, we were just dumping fuel. Kearshaw pocket knives, man. Love them. Not sponsored. Carry it everywhere. All right, that ought to be clean enough for us to get where we need to go. Do what we need to do. Man, when I jumped out of this thing saying I smell fuel, I was in the middle. I was front row at an intersection on a 6-lane road. Good Lord, my nerves, gang. Need to not over tighten that because I'm scared, because right now I don't have a spare. Jeez. I'm going to sacrifice this water because we spilled so much. Rinse it off a little bit. Guess I'm gonna fire it up, see what happens. Oh man. Maybe we'll just let it sit a minute. It's probably for the best. So I just sacrificed all the water I had, just trying to rinse everything off. Anywhere fuel had pooled, waiting. We got a good breeze, waiting until it doesn't smell like fuel, because the last thing I want is the battery to arc like it has been in the past, and you know, suddenly have a conflagration. You can see the rainbow from all the fuel sitting on top of the water. I think we're okay. All right, let's try it. Looks like we're doing significantly better. and assume the stuff in the back is water. Man. All right, straight to the hardware store. We pretty much made it to the hardware store, but I'm also getting like a weird lumpy idle, so I guess I'll be adjusting that. I don't know if I've created a vacuum leak with the thing I stripped out. I'm hoping I'm not manifesting a vacuum leak for the stud I stripped, but we'll see, won't we? Also, check the fuel. So far, so good there. Okay, that's not loose yet, so. We'll go with that. Hope for the best. Let's go get a fire extinguisher. Alright. That's your thing. I consider a pair of long pants though. Well, sports fans, they had two and I bought them both. Cost me 60 American bucks, which is not my favorite thing, but I'll tell you what right now. If this thing had caught fire, it would have cost me way more than 60 bucks. Alright. Out the box, because I don't want that many steps between me and this thing, you know what I'm saying? All right, let's continue our journey. Well, she's plenty hot. Let's see how she starts. Right up. And we were probably in there 5 to 7 minutes, which is more than enough time for the fuel to boil. So I think that adapter plate that we put on the carburetor is doing what it's supposed to do. Almost didn't show you it starting up because I kind of forgot what we were all about here today. What with the being afraid we were going to catch fire. Whew. Well, we made it, but now we got to wait our turn. So if she gets real hot and the fuel boils and all that stuff, we're gonna find out right now, because it's not cool outside at the moment. We got many a vehicle in front of us. This place is always a mess, but it is the closest one. Dump bed surely helped. Not bad. All right, 500 pounds, 28 bucks. Was it worth it? I don't even know. It doesn't even cover the fire extinguisher, but either way, that stuff had to go somewhere, and I learned the truck weighs 4,500 pounds without a load of scrap in it. Anyway, we just gotta keep doing these little adventures. Wonder if we can get into the bank. We got 10 minutes left. Cash our check. So this is where it gets interesting. We're at 210. Obviously we've shut her off, so there's no pressure really, which is not unusual, but this is where we'd see fuel boiling. It was idling at the scrapyard for like 15 to 20 minutes. The fuel is not boiling. Also, not leaking, which is pretty great. Good news, I believe we've put a major dent in the vapor lock issues we were having with these modifications. And, you know, the fuel leak that came with it on the way, we seem to have also solved, which is wonderful news. Most importantly, we didn't burn to the ground. That's pretty great news. Gotta keep a fire extinguisher in every vehicle. I don't care what year it is. You just never know what's gonna happen to you or the person in traffic next to you, and they're 30 bucks. It's cheap, cheap, cheap insurance. So, well, not an uneventful adventure, gang, but we are on the home stretch. Not to jinx it, but just to bring you along, you know? It's a lovely afternoon. We'll take the wins where we can get them, gang. So thanks for watching Between the Sharks. If you like this kind of stuff, consider subscribing. Good luck on your projects. We'll see you next week.